Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a few seconds. I see people are still joining us, so I want to give it a little pause and give everybody some time to join us today. Thanks. Hello, and welcome to the latest installment of AFTO's Fresh Take Friday webinar series. I'm your host, Carrie Rigdon, and we've got another great topic for you. Today, we're talking about artificial intelligence and food safety, and we've got an excellent speaker who will be our guide, joining us all the way from Dublin, Ireland. But first, a little housekeeping. This session is being recorded, and all those who registered will receive a link to the recording as well as a copy of the slide deck in the next week or so. If you have any questions for our speaker, please leave those in the Q&A box, and we'll address those during the question and answer portion at the end of our session. Feel free to use the chat, but we ask that people use the Q&A tool instead of the chat for your questions. It just makes it easier for us to see those. When we get to the question and answer session, if you'd like to ask a question verbally, just use the raise your hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen and we'll prompt you to unmute. I'll also remind you when we get to that. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker. Brendan Ring is the commercial director at Creme Global, a data science and predictive modeling company. He's worked with a wide range of companies in the food, cosmetics, and ICT space for the last 2 decades. He's experienced in engaging with C-level management and technical teams to scope complex requirements and deliver solutions to meet client needs. He's completed an engineering degree and an executive MBA at the University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. Now I'd like to turn it over to Brendan.
Thanks very much, Carrie. It's really a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for the invite and for hosting the webinar here today. So as part of your Fresh Take Fridays series, so you're doing wonderful work in getting the message out to a very broad range of audience. So quite a diverse attendees today, range from like industry, academic, a lot of government obviously as well. So yeah, delighted to be able to sit in and attend and present and share a little bit of what we've learned on our AI journey and some of the projects we've been working on. So yeah, thank you very much indeed. All right, so let me just roll on. So yeah, revolutionizing food safety using AI. So essentially, big buzzword at the moment. AI, it's absolutely everywhere, and so many people are like, well, how can I actually use this? What can I do with this on a day-to-day basis? So hopefully after this webinar, you'll have a little bit more knowledge on how it can be used and the real strengths and benefits of it. So yeah, and as Carrie said, happy to take any questions as they occur. So very briefly, who are we? So we're what I call a science first company. So we start with the science, and then we use data and AI to solve scientific questions. So on our team, is about 1/3 of the company are scientists, and then we have data scientists and then software engineers. So but yeah, very much a science first approach in what we do. So yeah, safeguarding reputations, I guess, when we work on projects, that's always foremost in mind for us. Who is going to be using the insight that we're generating? How are they going to use it? What decisions are they going to be making? How impactful are those to a broad range of industries? And obviously, when you talk about food safety, the consequences are very high here and critically important. So what's the reputation is always front and center on that and foremost to mind when we work on these types of projects. So yeah, and really facilitating interaction as well between industry and government as well, and doing that in a kind of a trusted collaborative manner. So and taking that, as I mentioned, science-based approach, independent science-based approach. So happy birthday to Creme Global. So we're 20 years old. So just next month. So yeah, we're delighted to have been around for that length of time. So yeah, many 10-year plus partnerships with a lot of different companies, government organizations, and membership organizations as well, which tend to have a lot of data that they want to share between competitors, and how can you do that? So we use different techniques to do that. So when you think about the challenges that are out there, there's obviously a huge abundance of data, and but unless you can actually structure that and tag it and make it in a way that can be analyzed, it's essentially useless. So so that's one of the real big challenges. And also, it's often very siloed, it's in different locations, and many times it's confidential data, and the most interesting data can be confidential data, even though there could be a lot of benefit to a whole industry if that can be shared. Regulations, they're complex and nuanced, and they change. And obviously we always live in a time of change, and very much at the moment. So much change happening around the world, even in relation to how fast even technology is changing. So we're in change is guaranteed. So that's always going to be the case. And the food supply chain is a very complex ecosystem. There's so many different actors, so many tiny players, so many large players, and the roles that regulators play. And it's a very global market as well, a very global supply chain. So, really complex, with different regulations all across the board. So, yeah, so really, there's some of the challenges, I guess, when we look at, how do we go to next generation approach to food safety. So, solving some of those. So, what we found in the many projects that we've done, really, number one, in terms of engaging on this, really understanding what are the benefits. Why do you want to collaborate? There's always hurdles to getting over to sharing data or to taking on projects or to doing these things. So really spending time upfront to understand the benefits. That's really important. One of the things where projects have fallen down is that if you don't have a common understanding of the terminology. So when you're, this isn't like, we don't do like sentiment analysis or, things like that. It's when you're dealing with scientific data, you have to be so accurate with units and with how particular bacteria might be classified, really being detailed on that everyone has a common understanding of the terminology. So, it absolutely is critical. And also, you always strive that this can reduce work for people, not increase it. If you ask people to do more stuff or to have to collect more data or do whatever, that they all add challenges. So, we always try and work within the bounds of what the data that people have or the techniques that people have, or, if they're using their own templates, how can we take that burden away of data engineering that into getting that right insight. So, yeah, so really focusing on, reducing those barriers to engagement. So as you look at this and you look at the different entities involved, you have business organizations that produce food, and then government departments that analyze and test and look at that, and then you've so many different players and parties in this. So, and then when you start to look at this over many other countries, you can see, so many different players, so many different parties in this, and how they all interact. So a couple of case studies, I guess, on projects that we do in these spaces. So we work with the US FDA. So we've been contracted by them to extract their food safety data from there's so many different silos and that they have. So so much of this data was available, even much of it even publicly available, but unusable because it wasn't all in the same format. So we've pulled that together and now actually have built some AI predictive models that can forecast upcoming products of concern. So, really useful, really powerful insights that they're getting from that, and using that now, very much kind of sharing complex data, and facilitating trust and transparency right throughout. So and not only FDA involved in this, so many other US government agencies as well. Just a sample of some of them that are involved in the project, and participating data and gaining from the insight to be got here. So another project, the Food Industry Intelligence Network. So this is based in the UK and has about, I think, over 60 retailers, food producers, ingredient suppliers. So they all have data on tests that they perform on the products as they come into their facilities. So sometimes they may get a signal going, okay, there's maybe a question in relation to the integrity of this, whatever it might be, spice or food product, whatever. But does it mean anything? So with their own data alone, it's very difficult for them to get an insight on it. So we facilitate them to share all of the tests that they do on the platform. It's anonymized even from us in this case, so we don't know who submits the data, and then we aggregate that, and that get displayed on dashboards, and then all of the participants can get insight into the wisdom of the crowd as such. Where is there a signal that they don't have with their own data alone? So really powerful, really useful tool. So many large US companies involved in that: Walmart, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, lots of big name companies involved. So, and you can imagine the hurdles they've had to come over from their legal teams and that to share this type of data, but they see the value in it. So, really kind of back to that. What's the benefit? So there's huge benefit right across the ecosystem to access and see this anonymized aggregated data. It's now pretty much of the stage of where companies are nearly seen to be remiss if they're not involved in this and getting involved in it. So a snapshot of some of the logos they're involved as well. So work in pesticides, crop protection as well. So in this case, MRLs, most of the audience here will be familiar with MRL. So in terms of how you calculate an MRL, that's what our core, as I mentioned, we're 20 years old as a company. Our core company started doing calculations on contaminant exposure. So obviously when pesticides are sprayed on crops and those crops are harvested, they're consumed as food products. So how do you determine what's the maximum concentration of a pesticide that can be sprayed? So that's done through our tool, and we've built this in collaboration with the crop protection industry and with the US EPA. So accuracy on terminology, accuracy on the calculations, all really critically important. And managing the communications between all of those stakeholders as well. So yeah, using a lot of probabilistic modeling. So, a few years ago, we've been doing probabilistic modeling for many years. We never called it AI. We now discovered that actually lots of people call this AI. So, yeah, so I guess that, this AI and forms of, these, large data sets, and machine learning, and that's been around for many, many years. It's really just the likes of ChatGPT and the rest and the LLMs that have really brought it into common parlance, where everybody is like, oh, okay, what's AI? We need to be doing something here. So, but these projects have been running for many, many years. So very, very similar in the fragrance industry as well. They really have set the gold standard in risk assessment because we have a huge amount of use data as one of the challenges with the REACH program. They have very little use data. They have a lot of tox data, but very little use data. So, and the cosmetics industry has really solved that. We gather concentration data on a quarterly basis. So feeds in can run really accurate models as well. So, yeah, lots of logos involved in that. So leafy greens, so West Coast US. Trying to manage the mitigation techniques for food safety. You're all well familiar with romaine lettuce recalls and all the rest in the US. They've been far too frequent. So, this industry has really taken on, okay, how do we have a step change improvement across the whole industry, across the whole ecosystem? So, led by Western Growers, we've a data sharing platform where we're gathering lots of test data and the growing conditions, and really helping the growers to take cost-effective preventative measures and to drive a step change in food safety. So, and building and trust with the government as well. So hopefully more news to come there shortly, but some exciting steps happening there as well. So LGMA, Leafy Green Marketing Association, involved in that as well. Couple of other AI tools that I guess we can consider in the mix here as well. So so AI is very, very powerful for um, gathering unstructured data. So you can use AI on both sides of a project here. So you can use it to bring data in, to clean it and structure it, and also then you can use it on the outgoing side. So when you have all of that, how do you run analytics? How do you run insight on that? And how do you mine that for information? But so this little flow chart here just talks a little bit about how you actually bring data into an ecosystem. So there's lots of AI tools out there for scanning literature, and so we can use those. Gather, so whatever the topic might be, gather all the relevant literature. So you can suck in those PDFs then, or those documents or HTMLs, whatever they might be, and manage them in a file, in a document management system. So then when you have that data in, they can be in a lot of different formats, but this is really, there's lots of tools and have been for many years to extract like key value pairs. So, search a term and what's the term following that, whatever it might be, say like a cast number or whatever. And then, tables, that has been challenging over the last couple of years, especially if table formats changed or there was different between one document or another, more rows or more columns, whatever, different headers, and or if they span multiple pages, that or spanned over a page border. So that used to be very challenging. That's no longer as challenging. So where it was very, very difficult to have consistent results, that the accuracy of those results now has drastically improved. But the real game changer has come along with contextual data. So where you need to feed in like a paragraph or piece of data and have something along the lines of an LLM, like a large language model, or the likes of ChatGPT, to analyze a piece of text and understand what that says and extract some information from that. It might be, say, a kind of like many experiments were done here involving these different types of chemicals. So that might all be captured in text in a piece of in a document or in a publication or whatever it might be. So that was impossible to do previously. That could only be done by human. Even doing word searches and stuff like that just didn't get the context of it. So AI has really had a dramatic impact there in understanding contextual data, asking it a question and extracting that piece of information. Now, we very much talk about controlled AI. If you were just to feed this whole document in and ask it some questions, the likelihood of it hallucinating, which is where it goes off and gives you, some unvalidated, unverified answer, that can be quite high. But when you do it in a controlled manner, you just feed in, specific pieces of text, and you just need a little bit of software to do that. And then you analyze that question, and then you use a lot of techniques to validate that answer as well, so that this answer should only be a number, or it should only have been more than four words long. Otherwise, it's an invalid answer, and you can get to build in all these checks, and essentially that's where prompt engineering comes in. So you can really refine and tune and train those prompts. So previously, where our software engineers were writing Python code, so they do that now as well as a software programming language, but they also, prompt engineering now has become a parallel type of software programming. So where really working on really accurate and refined prompts, that's where you can really improve the accuracy of using LLMs. So yeah, that's the contextual side. And obviously then once you have all of that data in, you can structure and tag that and get it set up in the appropriate formats. And then that makes it very easy for analyzing and for viewing that data on the output as well. So, machine validation can you can do an awful lot there that can flag any anomalies, and human validation as well, so always a human involved in these steps. So I was at a conference during the week there, and a very nice quote I heard from, rather than talking about AI enhanced humans, it was humans enhancing the AI. So you can see how these, humans and AI working together, then you have the best of both worlds, and you um, both combine to benefit and to improve the overall result. So, and then obviously graphing the results then. So the human eye is really, really powerful in seeing anomalies and seeing trends and seeing outliers. So sometimes just being able to graph something and view something, which if you had say 100 or 1,000 documents before, there's no way you can pick up a trend there. But when you put out that data, you put it into a graph, all of a sudden the message can jump out. So we've done a couple of projects there where that, really the insight that you can get just by viewing something in a chart is really dramatic. It's really stark. So yeah, very, very powerful use of AI. That's probably mostly where we get most use out of AI, is on the data input side. So I think that's just important to point out. It doesn't always have to be at the high end modeling side. So another interesting use of AI is around training, and in this case, we're talking about food safety training. So, it can be it's quite a scientific topic, and it takes quite a bit of domain expertise to really understand and to bring people up to speed on food safety. Depending on the industries, but a lot of industries in the food system have high staff turnover, which is a really challenging and expensive to train people, and then really challenging, to when they go and leave, and you have to re-recruit again and train again. And obviously the stakes, as we mentioned already, are so high if this goes wrong. So how can AI be used as kind of like your assistant, to sit there beside you to help you to do the right thing when you need to do what you're doing on a day-to-day basis? So how, rather than just kind of your typical training of like here's a manual, whatever, so AI can really be made bespoke and relevant. So it can also adapt to the user's level of expertise as well. So as a user is going through their training process, some areas they might be far more expert, and some areas they might need to reiterate or to get back to more in the basics. So that's where AI can really come into its own, to be adaptive and interactive. Very easy to make it mobile enabled as well. So you can have it on an iPad or browser or mobile device, whatever it might be. A lot of people in the food industry, English not their native language, so being able to automatically translate that to their local language. So that's one of the other big uses of AI, is translation. So being able to learn in your own language, and then even translate that back to English if you have to enter the data in English, but or as you're using it as an interactive tool, having a dual language can really aid all parties involved, especially as well as if as data may have to be shared with other players, or shared with customers. Being able to have a multilingual lingual option here is really, really powerful. And if you can gamify something and make it more intuitive and make it more user friendly, and have it like bite size, and have it more video enabled, and or chat, or even some people like to learn verbally. So being able to talk and have the training tool talk back to you, and be able to interact it, with voice if your written language isn't that strong. So yeah, AI really a game changer in this space, and really embracing it there can be really exciting. So Um, so on the other end of the scale then, so we kind of talked about how you might bring in literature, data and structure all of that, or some companies might have a lot of their own data. So lots of projects there where we've worked with companies and helped them understand what's the business question that they have and what data they might have available and what you might be going to do with that. And then there's lots of other third party and lab data as well. So in some of the projects, we've built APIs, so there's like an automated computer program essentially to extract data directly from a third-party lab. So, all of these different ways that you can essentially, data engineer all of that data, get it structured and tagged in the appropriate format, and validate that. So then as it comes into the AI model, then so that's the other use of AI, when you can start to mine and analyze and look for trends, anomalies, in particular where you've multivariate analysis required. So essentially what that means is that if you have say a system and there's 5 different parameters involved, and 4 of them are inputs and they drive 1 output, you can look at those 4 and see how they change and how that influences over time. But very few systems, especially in the food industry, are as simple as that. You will often have hundreds of variables and they all interact with each other and influence each other, even though they're still only on the input side. And then you might have a lot of different conditions on the output side that you're looking at as well. Food safety obviously being an underlying one, but there may be sensory models, there may be other elements about stability, or all of these other critical parameters that you want to try and understand. So that's where AI really comes into its own, where you have many hundreds of parameters that interact, where the human eye can, this goes far beyond being able to graph something. There's just way too many dimensions to be able to understand and see. So what AI allows you to do is really, lean into the compute power that's available in the cloud now, which storage is, the cost of storing data and the cost of computing data has absolutely fallen off a cliff over the last 5 years even. So the availability of really high-powered computing to run multiple scenarios in like seconds, or in some cases minutes, if it's a large a large number of scenarios, and to find what's that optimum, what's those optimum set of conditions, and what does an extreme set of conditions look like in either direction. So really powerful there to be able to dig deep and understand and analyze what's happening at a very in a very complex system, and to be able to do that so much more cheaply than you can do typically. So just as a wrap up, so why do this, as we mentioned? So really getting over the hurdles for collaboration. So industry will have a lot of their own data. Our company will have a lot of their own data. Their industry, the competitors, will have a lot of data as well. And there's so much data out in the literature. What's the business benefit? Why do we want to do this? When you go to senior management within your organization and you have, explain your case. So really understanding, well, what are we going to get out of that? That's really the critical element of it. And, as we've seen, you can really get some amazing insights from it. And getting those and getting that alignment early and upfront, and ensuring that everyone is understand what the objectives are. As I mentioned on the terminology as well, that's really critically important as well. So really you can drive such efficiency by carefully planning upfront before you venture into an AI project. So and that's it. Hopefully that was useful to people, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Brendan, for giving us a tour through current AI and food safety today. Just a reminder, if you have questions, you can type them in the Q&A tool, or if you want to ask your question or make your comment live, feel free to hit the raise hand and we'll take you off mute. Well, we actually have some really good questions to start off. So First, you shared examples of developed countries, United States, the UK, that have contracted with your company. Has any developing country contracted with you as well? If so, could you kindly share? And was it affordable to them? Or do you know of any similar kind of case studies from developing countries?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So actually, we're just involved in a project right now, working with developing countries to improve food safety. So there is significant benefits to be gained for developing countries in this space. Um, Essentially, if they can improve their food safety standards and they can do that in a very open and transparent way, they can then dramatically increase their exports, their food safety their food exports, which obviously drives then their GDP, drives revenue into their country. Especially for developing worlds where food exports can be a very significant part of their revenue, of their income for the country. So yeah, we're working on a couple of projects in that space. The From a cost perspective, I guess that's the we see this as almost being it can self-fund itself, because when you're involved in exporting, large volumes of produce, there is any if even if you can prevent one shipment from being either turned away or delayed, like the costs incurred there are massive compared to anything like what the costs are involved here for running these types of platforms. So you can also step into it very piecemeal as well. So you can start just sharing, growers or fishermen, others can just start sharing data on a very simple platform, and that data can be made available to the appropriate people, even to the customs inspectors in the importing country. So, being able to fast track your produce through customs, especially when you're talking about fresh produce, or if there's a fear of say frozen shipment and sitting on a dock somewhere and not in the proper temperature control conditions. So the consequences there are quite high. So for some very simple, very low cost data sharing techniques, that the platform here exists already. So you can get up and running very, very easily. So yeah, active projects there right now in developing countries. So yeah, an exciting space, I would say.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that, Brendan. Another question we have, you had talked about, I think particularly the training example about translation. And Mary would like to know, how accurate is the language interpretation translation? Because errors here could be quite serious. So
Yeah.
what's your sense of the accuracy of that?
Yeah, it has improved dramatically, I would say, over the last probably 2 years even, and the rate of improvement is increasing. So it's yes, it absolutely is not perfect yet, that's for sure, and you can't over depend on it. One way of addressing that is a double translation as well. So I can get translated into the native language, or say translated in English and then back into the native language again, and people can cross-check. So it's absolutely something that has to be cross-checked and validated. Also, as you're building out the training material, you can also obviously have native speakers check and validate that before, direction is given on that. Really where you be coming into like danger mode, I suppose, is if you're doing live translation on real-time data, real-time events that were very critical from a food safety perspective. So, we're not there yet. That's not where the level of accuracy is there now. So you can use it, you can use it on the fringes in a controlled manner, but also be able to, do it far more cost effectively than you could have done before. So yeah.
And just a quick follow-up to that, are you able to say like which developing countries specifically, or kind of the area of the world,
We're
just to have
working
a
in the
better idea?
Yeah, the Caribbean at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. Um, I have another question. You talked a lot about Creme Global's work, data trusts, and AI, but one of our listeners wants to know, are there other companies in the market are offering these services for food safety? Other companies or providers similar to you? Is this a um, kind of a specialized service, or is this more generalized, I guess?
There's certainly a very large quantity of data science companies out there, and people will have heard probably of the IBM or the IBM Data Trust, and there's blockchain was very popular technology a number of years ago, and there's a famous Walmart IBM project on looking at traceability. So yeah, for sure, there's other technologies, other platforms out there. Then you'll also have a lot of like consulting companies that can provide guidance and provide training, provide advice, and that. I am not aware of other companies with doing the same kind of data trusts, I guess, that we've been building for the likes of Finn and the FDA and Western Growers and that. So yeah, we're pretty unique from that perspective in facilitating this interactive data sharing in the food safety space. So that we're definitely unique there. But there's obviously a large quantity of companies out there doing elements of this anyway, and obviously doing other parts much larger than we do, and all of that. So yeah, but I think from the data trust side, we're definitely unique.
Good, thanks for that. Yeah, keep the questions coming. And the next one, can you describe a case where AI was used to eventually decrease like incidents of recalls? Do we have any kind of evidence that we're having a defined public health impact?
So yeah, for sure on Finn, people have got good insight from that. That project has been up and running for a number of years, and that's industry sharing data with each other, and they're taking actions and taking steps on that. The one good thing about the Finn data is it's on incoming inspection into a facility, so as opposed to a product that's on the market already. So, companies have been able to take steps to remove products from within their own manufacturing process, or, before it goes onto the shelves. So they've been able to identify issues there up front. On the FDA, obviously some interesting insights being built out on that. Can't get into the details on those yet, but certainly exciting projects there. And yeah, on the Western growth side of things, there's been definitely a step change of improvement there as well. Obviously, still some incidents happening there and more to be done, but a lot, major steps forward. Infant formula, another interesting space as well. Interesting projects in at play there as well. So yeah, I think across the board, I guess there's been you know definite improvements. Can I point to any recall that didn't happen? That's a bit of a trickier question to answer, I suppose. But yeah, it's this we're moving in the right direction of improving food safety. This is we're moving towards. We're not there yet, but we're moving towards next generation food safety. So these are start these this is the way forward, I guess, to continue making these improvements. So.
And a quick follow-up from Nora. You had mentioned the infant formula case. Could you briefly describe that a little bit more, maybe the methodology that's being used?
Afraid not.
Okay.
Yeah, not yet, at least.
Okay.
Not a project I can talk about openly.
Got it. Well, that actually made me wonder for some of these case studies when Creme Global has finished, do you publish these anywhere for folks to be able to learn
Uh,
from that?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time to be very open and transparent on the platform that we built, and in particular on the exposure platform. As I mentioned, we're 20 years old, so a lot of work has gone in over the years to explain how the model, this is in particular on the exposure model, how that works. It's, it was in the early days, it was like, oh, it's black box, and we're like, no, no, it's absolutely not black box. Yes, for sure, it's complicated and there's a lot of layers to it. But let us show you, let us explain. And we've done workshops with regulators. So the FDA, for example, use our model. We did workshops with ASCCS in Europe that reports into the European Commission. And then the walkway going, okay, I see how this all fits together, and how it works, and how it can be used, and the scientific integrity in it as well. Similar then, we've kind of that's come forward, I suppose, in our ethos and how we approach projects, and how we communicate and talk about the projects that we do. So yeah, lots of case studies on our website. I think we've over 100 or almost 100 scientific publications on our site as well. So yeah, like we really try and share how to do this, how to do it well, and to try and food safety is an uncompetitive space. So working together and sharing this knowledge is an important part of what we do. We do a lot of webinars, and here I am, obviously. So so
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Brendan. And kind of keeping, we were talking about recalls, kind of keeping with that kind of preventative and impact of public health. We have a question. Are you using predictive modeling to track or predict food safety outbreaks or public health pandemics, or do you know of any work in that space?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, epidemiology. So it's a space we've thought about, and we don't have any active projects there on it at the moment. But yeah, for sure, you can see how, if you consider, if you're trying to understand what the risks are, where they're happening, being able to interconnect that as another data set. We see a lot of, there's so much data out there that we just see that as another kind of data set that can feed in and help to understand and track and predict as well. But yeah, you can, it's not an active space for us, but certainly an area of interest for us, I would say. So yeah.
Nice. And switching gears a little bit, I'd like to go to a question in the chat by Anne. Can you speak a little bit about AI usage in equipment, such as AI cameras for foreign material detection? Are you aware of how they're being used or tested or validated, and how effective they are in foreign material prevention?
It's an interesting one. I'm literally just, as I mentioned, I was at a conference during the week, and I was on a panel of 6 other companies talking about AI, and one of my fellow panelists from another company has that exact technology in the pharmaceutical space, actually. And where they're using it is from a batch changeover, a product changeover. So right now it can take, many hours to do a validation that the line has been cleared, and that there's no foreign material, or there's no product from the previous run. So that and you can imagine the complexity of these equipment. Could involve people having to climb under equipment or into dangerous positions to try and validate this. So but because it's highly regulated industry, you cannot press run on the next batch until that's been done. So his company is working on using AI and vision systems to be able to do that validation. So he kind of described it as like they got most of the ways there and being able to do it easily, but they, enormous effort to be able to do it in a validated way. So for sure, so vision systems been around for years, 20, 30 years, but it was all about kind of training pixels and understanding, and very kind of, yes, no on a pixel or not. So what AI has brought to the table is an ability to be able to interpret video data at a much more intuitive, a much more kind of human-like approach to understand it. So yeah, for sure, a very exciting space. And so yeah, lots that can be done right now. Doing it in a validated way, absolutely possible, but very challenging.
Got it. Um, and so we've talked about various ways of kind of protecting public health. And one of the challenges we're facing also is regarding food fraud. And Mike wants to know, how can AI help regarding food fraud and authenticity of raw materials? Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So obviously Finn is close in that space as well. So detecting anomalies there, that's for sure. But next generation approach for that is really understanding and mapping out the supply chain and the ecosystem, and understanding where when the product that product is being produced, what are the conditions there at the time. How complex is the supply chain? Where is the opportunities for fraud to come into that? So it's, as we mentioned before, it's a very messy, very complex system, and fraudsters take advantage of that, of that messiness. Like, so, is there a likelihood that, even if you only ever watched price data and you saw that there's a massive shift either up or down, actually, interestingly, because either can lead to fraud, um, that's always a trigger to understand, okay, we need to look closer here. And then you can start to explore, okay, where is the most likely opportunity for this to happen? So, AI can fast track that kind of analysis far greater than could have been done before. Obviously satellite imagery and IoT and shipment data and refusals data. There's so many different means of being able to, I guess, bring all of this information together. Any one of those on their own is not going to give you an answer. It's only really when you start to combine it, and that's where you really need the power of AI to be able to combine it. And then you can start, being able to increase the likelihood of detection, I would say. There's no silver balls here, and it's really our crystal balls, sorry. And we'd be very hesitant to ever say going, yeah, we will, there'll be a 4% increase in whatever next year, and it'll most likely, it's going to come from here and it's going to happen in that month. That's fanciful. But you can certainly develop ranked lists of likelihood, that is absolutely the case. And like, okay, where might you need to increase your vigilance? And where's the best return on your investment for additional checks that you might need to be doing, whether you're both industry or regulator or whatever, whoever you are in the ecosystem. So
Yeah, great. Yeah, and I, obviously, the food supply chain very complicated, and it just keeps getting more complicated. So, uh, continue to put your questions in the chat. I don't see any, or the Q&A box. I don't see anything yet, anymore, I should say. But just a question that I had. So where do you think the most advancements will come in AI and food? And also just wondering, what about for small companies and industries, or is this just for the big guys?
no, it's definitely become accessible. Uh, Even a lot of companies are simply implementing AI just to be able to mine the data that they have in their own drives and their own shared drives, or their OneDrives, or whether it's Microsoft or Google or whatever it might be, or the so that's a really powerful implementation of AI. Obviously, you need to, you can't just roll that out willy-nilly, because it starts harvesting HR records and things like that. So it needs to be implemented in a careful manner. But that's probably the most common implementation of AI at all levels of factory sizes, or company sizes, or regulator sizes, or departments. To be able to give a chat interface to the data that you've been sitting on. Many companies have been around for so many years, digitalizing, so much data is in digital format, even meeting notes and everything. So being able to drill in and understand that, and get insight from that. So that's certainly one easy implementation. Then in just even in terms of you know, so many people obviously do an awful lot of testing, pre-release or shipping out products and, tested, filed away, left and forgotten. Being able to use AI to analyze that, to clean that up, structured, being able to see, okay, it seems every May we have an increase, the humidity changes, there's an increase in condensation, we get a higher spike in whatever bacteria, or there's a pest activity increases, twice per year. Why is that? What can we do? How can we get ahead of that? Or the water income and water quality has changed. What's happening? How can you see this? What might have happened? So yeah, there's so many simple little projects you can be done. There's very cheap sensors. We talked about this previously, carry on other workshops and stuff. The IoT, Internet of Things, or IIoT, Industrial Internet of Things, and being able to implement sensors or cameras or small little kind of devices that will just detect information. Say if you're having to record something manually and being able to understand and analyze plot and that, integrate that with some other data sets. So it doesn't have to be a crazy mad expensive project to get up and running on AI. There's there's a if you just think about just getting involved in data and digitizing the data that you have, that alone without getting into like heavy AI projects, there's a huge amount of insight can be gained. As I mentioned, visualizing something can be really powerful. So yeah, there's a lot of stepping stones into this. It doesn't have to go full on ChatGPT straight out of the box. So.
Great. Well, thanks for the great discussion. We normally schedule these for 50 minutes because we know folks are busy and get on to your next thing. So I want to thanks Brendan for joining us here today, and thanks for everybody for your insightful questions. Please be on the lookout for that post-webinar email that will include access to this recorded session and a PDF version of the presentation. And to remember to check out Fresh Take Friday's webinar series at afto.org. We have our next one coming up in May 16th is the policy landscape ahead, food safety and agriculture in the new administration. So check that out, and we hope to be adding more to the schedule later this spring. So thanks everyone for joining us, and have a good rest of your day.